that Crowley, since the early part of the war, had been a prominent writer for a pro-German publication called The Fatherland, which was edited by a fellow by the name of George Sylvester Viereck. And Viereck was a German-American, passionately devoted to Berlin's cause, and indeed he had hired Crowley to write quite obviously a rather violent anti-British propaganda. So, Ord was a little interested in this. But eventually, as the inquiry went further, the one thing in this whole file that jumped out at me that I didn't expect to find, something I wasn't looking for. I knew that Crowley later had made these allusions to when he was pressed about, writing this propaganda during the war and being a traitor to Britain. He would almost angrily retort that, well, really, I was serving Britain. I was working for king and country. And most people, I think, had dismissed that either as just, a kind of tired old traitor, fantasizing, or that at least exaggerating, and no one had really looked into that, and I didn't expect to find anything different. But here was a case of where Ord was literally warned off, and the key element in this was the statement that you get this from sources in New York, inside the New York State Bureau of Investigation, in another agency, and the Department of Justice, that Crowley was an employee of the British government. And that the consulate knew what he was doing. They knew about his writing for the German magazines, and basically leave him alone.
Not to worry. All right. Stand by, Dr. Spence, if you would. We'll be right back. Aleister Crowley, this is an amazing historical find, all of this data put together in an extraordinary book, and we'll continue in just a minute with Secret Agent 666. Okay, right back with Secret Agent 666 and Dr. Richard Spence. He is again, chair and professor of history at the University of Idaho. This is an amazing look at history. Go ahead with your story. So, was this fellow Ord, by the way, the fellow who Fort Ord was named after?
No, I don't think so. He was just a fairly minor officer in the U.S. Army at the time.
Okay, well, he was
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say he was told to leave Mr. Crowley alone. Everything was just fine, not to worry. Okay.
He didn't know quite what to make out of the report. I think at one point it includes, I wonder if Crowley isn't somehow double-crossing. If the British think that he's working for them, maybe he's double-crossing them. But nonetheless, he ceased any further. There's nothing happened to Crowley, which is a common pattern as it goes through. I mean, one way to sort of move ahead on this is that there's no question. I mean, Crowley was very actively involved in advancing German propaganda in the U.S. throughout the war. And then, in fact, it stayed in the U.S. actually until the end of 1919. So, others could argue also shirked his entire duty to England, was out of the country during that period. And when he returned to Britain at the very end of 1919, just around Christmas, you'd assume that Scotland Yard or MI5 or any number of other agencies would be interested in him.
Yeah.
Nothing happens to him. This is one of the interesting things about him. For all of his evil reputation, deserved or undeserved, for all of the crimes that various people allege to him, he's never arrested for anything in Britain. He never falls afoul of the law. But the worst that ever happens to him is that he goes bankrupt in the 1930s.
Gee.
Even then, he gets bailed out somehow.
Well, the handwriting is all over the wall. I get it. Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, let me go back to Lusitania. I don't want to leave that one. Tell us what that was about, and the year and all of that.
Well, I think as again, as many of your readers, your listeners